on LBC in London. As I'm sure you've heard, much of central London is on lockdown after a suspected terror attack outside the Houses of Parliament earlier this afternoon. 4 people are dead, including a police officer. A car was driven across Westminster Bridge at 2:40 this afternoon and ploughed into a crowd of people. There was then, moments later, somebody actually entered the Palace of Westminster itself, so it looks to me like it must have been 2 coordinated attacks, although this has not yet been confirmed. And the assailant that entered stabbed a police officer who has subsequently died, and the assailant was then shot by armed police, and he is now dead too. There is a lot of footage out there on social media showing people lying injured on the road and on the pavement. I wouldn't recommend looking at it if I were you. The Metropolitan Police say they're treating this as a terrorist incident, and buildings are in lockdown. In fact, last I saw, I think about 600 MPs and staff were actually locked inside Westminster Hall. Just a short time ago, the Met Police Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley gave this statement.
The attack started when a car was driven over Westminster Bridge, hitting and injuring a number of members of the public, also including 3 police officers on their way back from a commendation ceremony. The car then crashed near to Parliament, and at least one man, armed with the knife, continued the attack and tried to enter Parliament. Sadly, I can confirm that now 4 people have died. That includes the police officer who was protecting Parliament, and one man we believe to be the attacker who was shot by a police firearms officer. The officer's family have been made aware. At least 20 people have been injured. As part of long established and well-rehearsed plans, Parliament has been locked down, and the Met responded in line with our plans for a marauding terrorist attack. That response included uniformed and specialist firearms officers. We now, of course, have an ongoing operation, and whilst we currently believe there was only one attacker, I'm sure the public will understand us taking every precaution in locking down and searching the area as thoroughly and exhaustively as possible. And I know that the officials working within Parliament and public in the area completely understand the need to do this, and I thank them for their patience and their support. This investigation has the full weight and expertise of the Counter-Terrorism Command behind it. And if there are people who saw the events unfold today that haven't yet spoken to us, I would urge them to get in touch. A crime scene will remain in place in the affected areas in Westminster, and as you'll understand, it's vital we carry out a painstaking investigation to recover all the possible evidence. Looking forward, throughout the rest of the day, including when people are commuting home, and indeed over the days that follow, the people of London will see extra police officers armed and unarmed on our streets. This includes our officers working longer hours and extra shifts alongside our colleagues from British Transport Police and the City of London. And of course, as you're aware, we can call on the support of the military should we need to at a future point. We are also in the process of opening up our casualty bureau to help those people who are worried about friends and family who may have been caught up in the attack. Furthermore, we're reaching out to communities and community leaders across London to reassure them. Our strength as a city depends on our ability to stand together at such terrible times. If anyone sees anything suspicious or anything that causes concern, please do contact us, don't hesitate. My thoughts are with all those who have been affected by today's attack, and as a service, we've lost one of our own as he acted to protect the public and his colleagues. This is a day we planned for, but we hope would never happen. Sadly, it's now a reality. We will continue to do all we can to protect the people of London.
Well, that was Metropolitan Police Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley giving us the latest update from the police's perspective. Well, a lot of roads are closed in London, and I've even heard of some tube stations in the East End of London being evacuated, so there is quite a lot of concern on the streets of London tonight, and I have to say getting up to the LBC studio today by car was pretty difficult. Let's cross down to Westminster now. Let's go to our political editor Theo Usherwood. Theo, I think you're down by the security cordon right now, aren't you?
Yes, I'm currently looking at 2 heavily armed police officers at the security cordon just by Westminster Bridge. If I look to my left, the police lights are still flashing from a number of police cars on Westminster Bridge, where investigations are continuing The buses along the bridge are still there. They were evacuated as this first attack happened. And from what we understand, a car mounted the pavement and drove into a group of tourists. I was there in the immediate aftermath of what happened, and I saw 4 people lying in the road, one woman with bleeding badly from her head. Over opposite Westminster Tube Station, the main entrance, a car, what appears to be a 4x4 car, rammed into the railings of the Houses of Parliament. In both of those attacks, 3 police officers were injured, I'm told. And then the third part of this, what appears to be coordinated terrorist attack, a man armed with a knife went into entered New Palace Yard, which is on Parliament Square, the entrance, one of the main entrances to the parliamentary estate, and stabbed a police officer. The former Foreign Office Minister Tobias Ellwood rushed to the aid of the officer, gave CPR to try and save his life, but unfortunately that couldn't. He was unsuccessful, and this evening that officer's family are being informed of the tragic events. We understand from the bridge up to the attack on the bridge and the railings, by the railings I described, up to 20 people injured, some of them with what police are describing as catastrophic injuries, and in total 4 people dead, including the attacker and the police officer. And
Theo, I saw a picture on Twitter from about half an hour ago of Westminster Hall, the oldest part of the Palace of Westminster, with sort of hundreds of people, sort of MPs and researchers. Are there still lots of people trapped inside the building?
Yes, inside Westminster Hall, MPs have been told they could go back into, or being in the process of being summoned back into the House of Commons, and there have been a few who've been allowed out, but still an incredibly heavy police presence down here in Westminster. Officers taking no chances. People aren't allowed to move freely. There is a special cordon just by New Scotland Yard where the press are allowed to are congregating, cameras from all over the world covering this terrorist attack, the worst terrorist attack on London since those bombings in 2005, and of course since then there was the attack, the murder of drummer Lee Rigby down in Woolwich a couple of years ago. But tonight, London on very much a heightened state of alert.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. There are people out there that witness this, and whilst we're not doing a phone-in show this evening, if any of you that are listening to this were in or around the Westminster area at the time, please give me a call. And one person who was there on the scene is Richard Tice, who's the co-founder of Leave.eu, a businessman, a friend of mine, as it happens. And Richard, you were on the scene pretty shortly afterwards, I understand.
Good evening, Nigel. I came out of the tube at Westminster Station, must be just 2 or 3 minutes after the events, and police were moving the public with increasing sort of ferocity, and inevitably in that situation, there's a sort of bewilderment, and I was moved on to the bridge itself, and as I stood on the bridge and looked around, I suddenly saw at the northern end of the bridge on the pavement, on the west pavement, 3 people or bodies lying on the ground, being tended to by passers-by because medics had barely arrived at this stage. And then I looked along the length of the bridge, and just dotted all the way down the bridge on the other pavement, there were just bodies or people just lying on the ground, and I sort of lost count. I mean, whether it was 10, a dozen, I don't know, and just a complete sense of bewilderment. What on earth has gone on? Was it,
Richard? Was there a mood of panic? Were people running away from the scene as quickly as they can?
No, completely opposite, to be honest. I think everybody, myself included, was sort of almost rooted to the spot, bewildered, and then someone next to me said exactly what had happened, which was that this car had literally driven the whole length of the bridge from south to north on the pavement, mowing people down before crashing into the railings. No, there wasn't panic. Just I think the brain just trying to sort of compute events that had happened. I mean, how do you see a whole load of people just lying on the ground, clearly in some cases incredibly badly injured?
Yeah, must have been an incredibly shocking sight, Richard.
It was indeed, yeah.
Well, listen, thank you. Thank you for sharing that horrendous experience with us. Richard Tice, thank you very much. And anybody else that was there that's got anything to add to what Richard Tice saw on the bridge, please do get in touch, let us know. And there is the possibility that this situation is ongoing. Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, has kind of hinted that it's an ongoing situation. And I have to say, I did get a little bit of intelligence before the show began that there is a story out there that somebody is still on the loose. We don't know. We'll bring it to you, as things break. So if you happen to be there earlier, please get in touch. The number as ever, 0345 60 60 973. Equally, you can text me at 84850 or you can tweet me on @LBC. Right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's 7:15 and time for travel with Ross Powell.
Would you like to hear some information that could financially benefit yourself and your family? I thought so. You seem like the sort of person who puts their loved ones first, someone who
could be drawn in by the emotional manipulation of an investment scammer. At the Financial Conduct Authority, we're committed to keeping you safe. So if you've been offered an unsolicited investment opportunity, be a scam-smart investor and check the FCA warning list of firms to avoid at fca.org.uk/scamsmart.
Selling is just as easy as buying on eBay.
Oh, Liz, you're such a hoarder. There's so much stuff in this wardrobe, some have even got new tags. I mean, when was the last time you fitted into these?
Leather trousers.
Look at the heels on those.
Vintage platform shoes.
And how many of these do you need?
Designer handbags.
And what is this?
Dazzling disco jumpsuits. With millions of buyers ready and waiting, there's no better place for you to sell than eBay. The ultimate way to streamline your wardrobe shop.
You could make the main dealer's day by paying over the odds. Or you could go to Big Motoring World and save a fortune on up to 2,000 pre-owned BMWs, Mercedes, Audis and VWs in stock. Then with the money you saved, put a smile on your face with a cheeky weekend away for two. Give yourself a break at Big Motoring World, just minutes from the M25. See bigmotoringworld.co.uk.
Save 15% with discount code MUM at zingflowers.com.
Zing flowers are amazing every time.
Your business is growing. Fantastic. But you need to hire fast. Enter Indeed.com. Already used by over 3 million businesses for hiring. And with more people in the UK using Indeed than any other job site, you'll find more great candidates and sooner on Indeed. Find your next hire on the world's #1 job site, Indeed.com. Terms, conditions, quality standards and usage limits apply. World's #1 job site based on total unique visitors to Indeed.com.
Your future is here. The Global Academy in Hayes is a state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Find out more at globalacademy.com.
Match, Malcher, workplace chair, pension, pop. Sound a bit alien? Well, he's saying it's time for small businesses to set up a workplace pension. Still sound alien? Don't worry, the People's Pension can help. We're an award-winning scheme run by a provider with 30 years pensions experience. Our complete solution gives small businesses total support. Join the thousands of businesses already signed up at thepeoplespension.co.uk/alien. The People's Pension's a workplace pension scheme regulated by the Pensions Regulator. The People's Pension. Designed for people, not aliens.
someone as family-focused as you
could be drawn in by the emotional manipulation of an investment scammer. Be a scam-smart investor. Check the FCA warning list before investing.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Ross Powell. Due to the ongoing police investigation at the Houses of Parliament, Parliament Square remains closed. The following roads are also shut: Millbank, York Road, Westminster Bridge Road, Victoria Street, Northumberland Avenue, Great George Street, Whitehall, Lambeth Palace Road, Victoria Embankment between Westminster Bridge and Embankment Tube. The Mall and Pall Mall are also closed, as are Westminster and Lambeth Bridges. Police are asking people to avoid the following areas: Parliament Square, Whitehall, Westminster Bridge, Lambeth Bridge and Victoria Street up to the junction with Broadway to assist the emergency services. Surrounding routes are extremely busy. The best advice really at this stage is to avoid central London by road. Westminster Tube Station is interchange only at the moment. You can't enter or exit from street level, but all other tube stations and lines are currently open. London Midland services are at a stand between Watford Junction and St Albans Abbey because of a faulty train. There's no service on Thames Riverboat from London Eye Pier or Westminster Millennium Pier at the moment. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
Exactly 1 year ago today, there were bombs on the underground in Brussels and over 30 people died. Today is the anniversary of that, and we see the first terror attack in London for many, many years. Whether that anniversary is significant or not, I guess we will learn more when we begin to find out who these attackers are. There's a huge wave of speculation, as you can imagine, on the internet. One person rumoured to be the attacker that killed the police officer and was shot. We don't know the truth of this yet. Many of us perhaps can guess. But we spoke before the break to Richard Tice, who was outside on Westminster Bridge when this happened, or just after it happened. But let's now speak to somebody who was actually inside the building and get their perspective. And I'm going to ask Christopher Hope, who's the assistant editor and chief political correspondent of The Telegraph, to see what he remembers from about 2:40 this afternoon. Christopher, good evening.
Nigel, hello, how are you?
Yeah, well, depressed, to be honest, Christopher. Yeah. Depressed, although I have to say, not wholly surprised, given the world we're in. Now, you were actually inside the building when this happened, yeah?
Yeah, I a complete view of the whole thing. I mean, if you imagine Big Ben looking at Parliament and those windows go off left to right, 2 rows of windows. Well, mine was the 5th window along. So I saw everything that happened. With the window wide open, there's a big bang around 2:40. And then a man was screaming, and then hordes of people started running right to left as I looked looking towards the Supreme Court from Parliament, towards Westminster Abbey. And then we thought it was a road accident, or I thought a bomb had gone off because it sounded like a bang, but obviously it was a car hitting the railings. And then we saw gunshots just outside the house, Westminster Hall. And then we were 2 guys fell down, and we were treated by ambulance, and ambulance landed by helicopter. So it's a heck of a time.
Yeah, and are you, Christopher, now out of the building?
No, I'm looking across now a scene of biblical proportions in Westminster Hall.
Yeah,
I'm with Simon Hart MP. There's at least 3 MPs I can see. Ian Duncan Smith. There's Bob Kerslake, the former head of the Cabinet Office and Civil Service. And we're all waiting here with kitchen staff and researchers and visitors and journalists waiting to be processed by the police who want to take witness statements and upload videos and film that anyone may have that may aid their investigation. So I have never seen anything like this since I was here for the lying in state of the Queen Mother. If you remember that, Nigel, back in the day, back in 2018.
Yeah.
When the place is full. It's full of people. They're handing water around, and it's a very British scene. You'd approve, Nigel. It's definitely the Blitz spirit of return.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's right. It sounds to me, Christopher, like you could be there a very long time, actually.
I think we're going to. Yeah, it will be a long time. But it's historical. They're passing around cups of water, and the security guard says, "Oh, just protect this gin."
Yeah, right. Yes, I'm sure. And and rumours abound that there's still somebody on the loose. Have you picked up that rumour as well?
Yeah, we had that rumour about an hour and a half ago from a senior government source who was caught up in the drama here.
Right.
But we haven't heard that since. So they were sweeping the House of Commons for security, and there was a rumour there was a second person. I must admit, I didn't see one when I was looking out the window. We only saw one person lying down, and we didn't. But of course, when it happened, everyone. So the public ran towards the gate, so maybe someone slipped in then, but I don't think that's the case.
No.
I just don't know. I just don't know, frankly. I don't know the answer. So
no. And stories on the news that one woman was actually fished out of the Thames. Did you hear that story?
We heard that, but when you're involved, I mean, you've only been in the public eye for so long now. But when you're involved in these things, you can only see what's in front of you. So
yes.
I gather
that
someone may have jumped off the bridge. Again, that's not what I can report. I didn't see it.
No, sure. Christopher, thank you for giving us that description of what's going on. I hope the water doesn't run out, and I hope at some point you actually get home this evening. But as you say, it sounds like a slight element of the Blitz spirit taking place there. Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed. Other breaking news, the Scottish Parliament has also been suspended. Now, of course, they had a very key debate today as to whether they were going to push ahead for a second, well, they call it independence referendum. I struggle a bit with that word, as you may know. know. But following the attack, the presiding officer, Ken McIntosh, said that the incident in London was affecting the contributions of MSPs and that the debate would resume at another time. Government ministers have also been told to only go and do urgent and essential visits tomorrow. Now, we are joined now by Chris Hunter, anti-terrorism consultant and author. Chris, it's been a long time since we had a terrorist attack in London.
It is, Nigel, yeah. And were you here during 7/7?
Yes, I was.
And do you remember that sort of feeling of numbness, of shock, of despair, of anger? We work in this industry, we work in this environment, we know the landscape, and yet it still never comes as a shock, does it? And I've been doing this for 25 years, and felt all of those emotions today. But, ultimately, I've not had a chance to listen to the programme as I've been walking across London because there's no transport. But basically, it's that blitz spirit that I definitely heard you mention as I was coming through.
Yes, I was talking to the Daily Telegraph's assistant editor who's sort of shut in Westminster Hall, and there are hundreds of them there. And he said, despite the horror of the whole thing, people are sort of just, as you say, stoically getting on with it. And we also had an eyewitness account from a businessman called Richard Tice, who was on the bridge, who said actually, people weren't screaming and running; they were trying to help. And
that's right.
Remarkable how people behave in these situations.
I joined the army when I was 16 in the north of England, in Yorkshire, and I've got lifelong buddies there. But there was always the sort of you're a southerner, and southerners are so unfriendly, especially in London. And I think the one thing about London, there's the London pace of life, as they call it, where people just get about their business and ignore each other, never maintain eye contact. But as soon as there's any sort of incident, if someone falls down in the road, if there's a terrorist incident, if there's a crime, that's when you see the real sort of humanity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that interested me on the pictures was seeing where the man ran through the gate into the yard and stabbed and killed a police officer, and then was shot down. And clearly, despite the casualty, I guess we could argue that Parliament was protected, that the guy didn't get very far.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was. But I noticed amongst the guys that were there, a couple in training shoes, a couple in what appeared to be jeans. Would these have been special officers that were sort of on standby and were called very quickly to come in? How does it work? There is obviously, a regular guard on the House of Commons. But when there's a major incident, where do these extra bodies come from?
Well, you'll be aware that there's an operation in place for the military to reinforce the Metropolitan Police Service, or indeed any of the cities in the UK during a major terrorism incident, or indeed a major incident full stop. I genuinely can't confirm or deny who those people were. Genuinely.
Yeah.
You personally know my background. I spent 4 years attached to the British Special Forces. I know that there's an agreement, and it's public knowledge. There's an agreement between the Special Forces and the government and supporting the regional police forces. They could well have been Special Forces, who knows? But of course, when there's an incident like this, my background was bomb disposal. There are generally a number of shifts of bomb disposal operators, an immediate standby team, and those that are on courses or leave. When an incident like this takes place, all of them get called in. I would imagine it's the same with the firearms officers from the Met Police as well, and indeed the other specialists, and they bring in other forces too. But it wouldn't surprise me if there were military elements, of course, coming in to reinforce.
Is the message to people coming into London that if something does go wrong, we're actually prepared and we can act very quickly?
Well, I've got to say, this is no propaganda coup. I've just walked across from the other side of Westminster, from Millbank Tower, and there were police everywhere. There were helicopters everywhere. There were reporters and journalists, of course, members of the public. There was that typical British stoic attitude. I spoke to a couple of the police officers and, offered my condolences regarding the police officer that died today. Basically, I think everybody does that British thing where as soon as there's a major incident, irrespective of our creed, colour, background, whatever denomination, everybody mucks in and does that typical sort of blitz spirit.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, one of the stories that we've been hearing over the last few years is that our security services and intelligence services are on top of this, certainly compared perhaps to our friends in France or perhaps in Belgium. And we do hear that X number of attacks have been thwarted. Sure. But can we ever stop an incident? I mean, we can't completely guarantee stopping this, can we?
That's right. And, I think you and I, Nigel, have we've met once before. We've certainly met through LBC before.
Yeah.
We have slightly different political opinions, but I have the greatest respect for many of the things that you say, actually, the majority of it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think,
Well, it's nice to hear.
Ultimately, we're both patriots. And I think the British population are patriots as well, but we also have that island mentality.
Yeah.
And we have that mentality that, you know, we're realists, we're logical, we're pragmatic. If we look at terrorism, it's an ideology. And I know this is something you've talked about before in the past as well.
Yes.
You can't defeat an ideology. What you can do is disrupt an ideology, and at the operational level, you can, you know, significantly disrupt it. And at the tactical level, you can mitigate against it.
Well,
I think we're seeing that at every level.
I think, Chris, I'm going to keep you here because I want to explore some of those themes, perhaps after the break. Meanwhile, the White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer has responded to the incident a little while ago. Let's just hear what he said at a White House press conference.
First, at the top, I wanted to note that the President has been briefed on the situation in London. He just spoke to Prime Minister May, and we'll have a readout on that situation and that call soon. We obviously condemn today's attack in Westminster, which the United Kingdom is treating as an act of terrorism. And we applaud the quick response that the British police and their first responders made to the situation. The victims in this are in our thoughts and our prayers. The City of London and Her Majesty's government have the full support of the U.S. government in responding to the attack and bringing those to justice who are responsible. We will provide you with further updates as warranted and, as I mentioned, a readout of the President's call with the Prime Minister.
You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Rupert Bartier.
3 people, including a police officer, have been killed and at least 20 others have been hurt in a terror attack in central London. A car was driven into crowds of people on Westminster Bridge before the driver ran into the grounds of Parliament, stabbing a police officer. He was then shot dead. Met Police Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley says that extra police are being deployed across London.
This is a day we planned for, but we hope would never happen. Sadly, it's now a reality. We will continue to do all we can to protect the people of London.
Tonight, the Prime Minister is chairing a meeting of the government's Emergency Cobra Committee. Stay with LBC for the very latest through the evening.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Ross Powell. Due to the ongoing police investigation at the Houses of Parliament, Parliament Square remains closed. The following roads around the cordon are also closed: Millbank, York Road, Westminster Bridge Road, Victoria Street, Northumberland Avenue, Great George Street, Whitehall, Lambeth Palace Road, Victoria Embankments between Westminster Bridge and Embankment Tube, the Mall and Westminster and Lambeth Bridges. Police are asking people to avoid the following areas: Parliament Square, Whitehall, Westminster Bridge, Lambeth Bridge, Victoria Street up to the junction with Broadway, and the Victoria Embankment up to Embankment Tube to assist the emergency services. Surrounding routes are extremely busy. On the tubes, Westminster Tube Station is interchange only at the moment. You can't enter or exit from street level. All other tube stations and lines are currently open. London Midland services are at a stand between Watford Junction and St Albans Abbey because of a faulty train. Disruption on this line expected to last till the end of the day. There's no service on Thames riverboats from London Eye Pier or Westminster Millennium Pier at the moment either. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
Now, the following information will only be of interest to more successful investors. I thought that might include you. You're obviously someone with a great track record and excellent liquidity who
could be drawn in by the flattery of an investment scammer. At the Financial Conduct Authority, we're committed to keeping you safe. So if you've been offered an unsolicited investment opportunity, be a scam-smart investor and check the FCA warning list of firms to avoid at fca.org.uk/scamsmart.
Writing job descriptions, managing candidates, setting up interviews. Hiring's hard. But Indeed.com makes it easy. Post your job, organise candidates, schedule interviews. All on the UK's #1 job site. And with more people in the UK using Indeed than any other job site, easy works. Find your next hire at Indeed.com today. Terms, conditions, quality standards and usage limits apply. UK's #1 job site based on total unique visitors to Indeed.com.
Did you know premium bonds have been around for 60 years? I recently won £100 in the monthly prize draw. I was off to the bank to deposit my prize warrant when my granddad came over. You know you can do all that online nowadays, he chuckled. And he was right. I now manage my premium bonds online, and I've chosen to have my winnings paid straight into my bank account. It's so much faster. You can too by visiting ns&i.com. Premium bonds. making people smile for 60 years.
The secret's out. Ray Morris Automatic Cars have been selling cars for over 50 years. With ultra-low mileage automatic cars from £5,000 to £25,000, they have the make and model to suit your budget. Ray Morris Automatic Cars in South East London, 10 minutes from the Dartford Tunnel. With over 300 automatic cars actually in stock. Buy one today and drive it away. AutomaticCarSpecialist.com, the not-so-secret home of automatic cars.
Save 15% with discount code MUM at zingflowers.com.
Zing flowers are amazing every time.
Match, Malcher, workplace chair, pension, pop. Sound a bit alien? Well, he's saying it's time for small businesses to set up a workplace pension. Still sound alien? Don't worry, the People's Pension can help. We're an award-winning scheme run by a provider with 30 years pensions experience. Our complete solution gives small businesses total support. Join the thousands of businesses already signed up at thepeoplespension.co.uk/alien. The People's Pension's a workplace pension scheme regulated by the Pensions Regulator. The People's Pension, designed for people, not aliens.
Now, someone as discerning as you
could be drawn in by the flattery of an investment scammer. Be a scam-smart investor. Check the FCA warning list before investing.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
You're listening to LBC, and as you've almost certainly heard, much of central London is on lockdown after a terror attack outside the Houses of Parliament earlier on today. 4 people are dead, including a police officer. And before the break, I spoke to Christopher Hope, the assistant editor of the Daily Telegraph, and he was trapped inside Westminster Hall and was describing hundreds of people there, water being passed around, everybody ready, waiting to give statements to the police, and the expectation, actually, they could be there for a very long time. But I'm going to be joined now by Baroness Tessa Jowell, who I understand has managed to get out of the building or be released from the building. Tessa, good evening. Are you there? Hello? No? Have we lost Tessa Jowell? Right, OK, we'll go back and find her. I've no doubt she's in a big crowd of people. I'm going to go back to Chris Hunter, who was with us before the break, anti-terrorism consultant and author, and ask, what is it that motivates any human being to drive a car through a crowd of people on Westminster Bridge?
Well, what we've seen, I'm afraid it's not a short answer, but I'll keep it as succinct as possible. What we've seen traditionally was Al-Qaeda and their sort of absolute devotion to cleansing the Holy Lands, Mecca, Saudi Arabia, of the infidels. And that really stems back to the first Iraq War, when Osama bin Laden offered to provide 200,000 battle-hardened mujahideen that had fought against the Soviets. And the King of Saudi Arabia chose 600,000 coalition forces, Americans, and people that were going to be drinking Coca-Cola and, doing inappropriate things. So that really miffed him. And there were a lot of people that decided to follow that particular cause. What we've seen with ISIL is a very, very different dynamic altogether. Al-Baghdadi, who formed ISIL effectively, who's the leader of ISIL, he decided to use the Quran and effectively trick people into believing that he was fulfilling the forthcoming prophecy as predicted in the Quran. And so both of those elements, whether you're a devout Sunni Muslim and, trying to rid the Holy Lands of the infidels, or whether you're, someone who believes in the fulfilling of the next prophecy in the same way that's, effectively when Noah built the ark, it was the same sort of deal. Yeah. You've got a lot of people that are very much drawn towards those beliefs. And then when you do so with radicalisation on the internet, which is a forum that everybody's exposed to, and when you use fake videos of American soldiers raping Arab women, which are totally fake, but which certainly in one case caused an airport attack, then, people are quite vulnerable. And that's what we're seeing here. They've got an amazing propaganda machine, as we call it in the military, information operations. Yeah, no, listen, thank you for that. And I just want to emphasise, we don't absolutely yet know what the causes of this attack are. We have our suspicions, but that's not yet been confirmed. But it's a very, very interesting description of how things have worsened over the course of the last decade. And I'll describe my own opinion if you wish me to, as to why.
Chris, stay with us. One of the problems in London, of course, is transport. And we've got LBC reporter Rachel Venables down at Waterloo Bridge. Rachel, what's the scene down there?
It's been quite eerily quiet, I think is the best way to describe central London this evening, and it has been all afternoon because huge chunks of the centre of the city have been completely cut off. I've been walking down roads as they've been blocked off and cordons have gone off around me with police officers, armed officers shouting, get back, move away, as they've decided to close more and more of the city. Just up on Waterloo Bridge, I can see across the Westminster Bridge, I can still see the police cordons, Big Ben lit up there as well, and hear the helicopter overhead. And really, I think people are just rushing home to their loved ones, heads down, a little bit quicker than normal. People have been saying to me, they are concerned, just trying to get about their day, really.
And we've had, I did hear reports of a tube station, Canning Town, that I was told there was a big security alert. Are there many other problems out there on the transport network?
At the moment, it doesn't look like there have been too many issues. Really, what I've seen is people choosing to walk, and whether that's decided, they don't just quite feel that safe on the tube, or maybe they've decided the tubes are probably going to be overcrowded, so actually I'll take to the streets anyway. I think that's been the biggest issue, and there may well be the odd station. We've obviously heard about Canning Town. We don't quite know the details of that yet.
Yeah.
So far, I haven't heard many reports of any stations here in central London having problems. Obviously, though, they will still be on high alert. Mentioned earlier, I've just seen streams of people rushing past me in all sorts of directions, deciding to walk home tonight, most of them, just because maybe they don't quite feel on the transport system that we have at the moment.
Yeah, Rachel, thank you very much indeed. Back to Chris Hunter, anti-terrorism consultant and author. A lot of people clearly have left London early. Roads closed, a tube station closed. What can we all expect? A lot of people travelling into London every day, millions of us working in London. What can we expect the response to be from the police and security services over the next couple of days? Is it going to take a bit of time to get back to normal?
Yeah, tonight I walked back across from Millbank Tower and had to circumvent the whole, as we call it, the government security zone, the area around Westminster, Whitehall and so on and so forth. And it was reminiscent of 7/7 when I was an intelligence officer at Cobra during those attacks. And, on the one hand, there's that sort of London resolve. On the other hand, there's still a degree of fear. And I remember, as I'm sure you do, Nigel, on 7/7, it was shock. On the 8th of the month, there were very few people travelling on the tube and public transport.
That's right.
2 weeks later, we had the 21/7 attacks, and virtually nobody went on public transport because terrorism is designed to, effectively play to our fears and terrorise us. And I think there's going to be that extreme right-wing response where we say, there's 9 billion people in the world, 1.2 billion Muslims, and we basically need to burn them all and get rid of them all. And, ultimately, if that was the case, if they were all terrorists, we'd all be dead by now anyway. And there'll be the extreme left-wing response where they say, anything we do is going to be an infringement on our civil liberties, and therefore let's do nothing. And clearly we've got to do something in between. Something has to be done. But there's going to be those extreme reactions. There's going to be the shock, the anger, the fear, the upset, all of those things that any of us experience during any traumatic incident.
Yeah, no, I get that. Chris, stay with us. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has just given a statement. This is what he had to say.
Today, London suffered a horrific attack near Parliament Square, which we're treating as a terrorist attack. A number of people have lost their lives and at least 20 people have been injured. My heart goes out to those who've lost loved ones and to everyone who's been affected. Tragically, a Metropolitan Police officer who is doing his duty protecting our city is amongst those who've been killed. And my thoughts are with his family this evening. I want to express my gratitude on behalf of all Londoners to the police and emergency services who've shown tremendous bravery in exceptionally difficult circumstances. I've spoken to the Acting Metropolitan Police Commissioner Craig Mackey and National Lead for Counter-Terrorism Policing and Acting Deputy Commissioner Mark Rowley and remain in close contact with them. Londoners should be aware that there will be additional armed and unarmed police officers on our streets from tonight in order to keep Londoners and all those visiting our city safe. I want to reassure all Londoners and all our visitors not to be alarmed. Our city remains one of the safest in the world. London is the greatest city in the world, and we stand together in the face of those who seek to harm us and destroy our way of life. We always have and we always will. Londoners will never be cowed by terrorism.
Well, that was a statement from Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. And I'm going to give you one eyewitness account, a member of the public who was in the Westminster Palace area earlier on today. This is what Jonathan saw.
We were sat in what's called the Jubilee Cafe, which is where the public can sit when they've gone through security. So for those who don't know Westminster, that's pretty much next to the entrances where taxis can drive in and out of Parliament to pick members up. All of a sudden, we saw security personnel, so be that the doorkeepers that check you when you have your bags checked, police all running round, sort of mass panic, almost along the lines of what we've seen on TV when we've seen things happen in Paris. People bursting into the cafe and ducking behind the bins there. So it was almost a surreal experience. I'm with 6 apprentices because we've got a parliamentary event that was going to take place today. So thankfully they're all safe. And you really didn't know what was going on. And then one of them said they'd heard gunshots. I have to say I didn't hear it. And then you saw sort of people piled on the floor. So whether that's one of that we're hearing reports that somebody's been attacked, you could see that sort of from the window.
Well, a variety of witness accounts from outside the building, on the bridge. We're bringing you news as it breaks. Right now you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:45 and time for travel with Ross Powell.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Looking first at what's happening in the centre of London. Due to the ongoing police investigation, Parliament Square remains closed. The following roads around the cordon are also closed, are as follows: Millbank, York Road, Westminster Bridge Road, Victoria Street, Northumberland Avenue, Great George Street, Whitehall, Lambeth Palace Road, Victoria Embankments between Westminster Bridge and Embankment Tube Station. The Mall and Westminster and Lambeth Bridges are also closed. Pall Mall, though, is now open again. Police are asking people to avoid the following areas: Parliament Square, Whitehall, Westminster Bridge, Lambeth Bridge, Victoria Street up to the junction with Broadway, and the Victoria Embankment up to Embankment Tube Station. Surrounding routes are extremely busy. On the tubes, Westminster Tube Station is interchange only at the moment. You can't enter or exit from street level. Severe delays on the Jubilee line between Stanmore and Stratford because of a passenger taken ill. Severe delays also on the Piccadilly line eastbound from King's Cross St Pancras to Cockfosters because of an earlier problem. London Midland have replacement buses from Watford Junction to St Albans Abbey because of a faulty train. That is expected to be the case until the end of the day. And there's currently no service on Thames riverboats from London Eye Pier or Westminster Millennium Pier. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
Do you have a pension? Maybe you've got more than one. How do you know if they're in the right pension funds, making as much money as possible for your retirement? Answer is, you probably don't. At The Pension Works, our fully qualified independent financial advisors could add instant value to your retirement fund. Simply text the word YES to 83222 for your free Pension Works health check. That's YES to 83222 today. Your pensions working harder with The Pension Works.
Let's talk about you. The I'll walk tomorrow you. The go on, I'll have a second helping you. The give us a minute love you. The heart disease you. So how about the enough is enough you? Start the fight back to a healthier you. Join over 1 million people who've taken the One You health quiz. See how you score. Search One You.
Did you know premium bonds have been around for 60 years? I recently won £100 in the monthly prize draw. I was off to the bank to deposit my prize warrant when my granddad came over. You know you can do all that online nowadays, he chuckled. And he was right. I now manage my premium bonds online. And I've chosen to have my winnings paid straight into my bank account. It's so much faster. You can too by visiting nsandi.com. Premium bonds, making people smile for 60 years.
Divorce. It threatens the things you've worked hard for in more ways than you can imagine. Your home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. Don't let divorce cost you any more than it has to. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Tomorrow, you could be flying a fleet of Boeing 777s and A380s to over 150 destinations around the world, all from your sunny base in Dubai. Emirates is hiring qualified, experienced pilots to work for one of the world's fastest growing airlines. You'll enjoy a tax-free salary, along with generous housing, education and health benefits. Meet our recruitment team at our London Roadshow and speak to our pilots to see what an Emirates life is like. Visit emirates.com/pilots for dates and times.
Save 15% with discount code MUM at zingflowers.com.
Zing flowers are amazing every time.
Selling is just as easy as buying on eBay.
Oh, Liz, you're such a hoarder. There's so much stuff in this wardrobe, some have even got new tags. I mean, when was the last time you fitted into these?
Leather trousers.
Look at the heels on those.
Vintage platform shoes.
And how many of these do you need?
Designer handbags.
And what is this?
Dazzling disco jumpsuits. With millions of buyers ready and waiting, there's no better place for you to sell than eBay. The ultimate way to streamline your wardrobe shop.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
Well, a horrible day. A terrorist attack in London, 4 people dead, 20 seriously injured. We do not yet know exactly who the perpetrators are, but we have seen a growth in terrorism in Europe and elsewhere over the course of the last few years. I'm bringing you breaking news as it's happening, but for those that want to follow this story, they can go to lbc.co.uk, where through the night, as stories develop, you will be kept informed. But I'm going to go back to Chris Hunter, the anti-terrorism consultant and author, and we were talking before the break about the sense of fear that people have, and we go back to July 07 with attacks on public transport systems and people being very reluctant to get on a tube or to get buses, and we talked a little bit about what's London going to be like tomorrow morning. Chris, give us some sense of perspective. Awful though the events of today are, give us some sense of perspective as to what the risks are.
Well, I think, terrorism, as we all know, is designed to terrorise. If you want to achieve something as any body of people, whether it's a political organisation, a financial objective, a religious objective, then the democratic process usually works. When that fails for people, or when they feel it won't work for them, then terrorism is an attractive option. And the idea is that you terrorise people, you scare them, you play to their fears. So actually, if you look back and you think about most terrorism incidents, and I'm in no way playing down or decrying what happened today, and my heart absolutely goes out to the families. I've done this for 25 years. I personally, my colleagues and friends put their lives on the line because we're patriots and we want to safeguard people. But there are facts, and we've got to be open to the facts. And the fact is that terrorists know that they can play to your emotions. And if you look at a terrorism incident in the United Kingdom, as a European, you've got a 1 in 100,000 chance of being murdered, typically. Mm-hmm. In the United Kingdom, you're 160 times more likely to be murdered than you are killed by terrorists. That's actually a 1 in 16 million ratio. And if you actually think back to all the terrorism incidents that have taken place over the last 10 years, you think of the number of losses, as tragic and terrible as they are, actually they're not a significant number. It's the consequences of those particular actions by the terrorists that really, terrify us. And to give you some idea, you're 1,000 times more likely to die in a car crash than you are to be killed by terrorists. You're twice as likely, if you go to America, to be killed by a toddler with a weapon, with a pistol or an assault rifle. Those are crazy, insane statistics, but they're true. And the fact is, generally speaking, you're unlikely to be killed by terrorists. But they know that by perpetrating these acts, by publicising them, by getting the media coverage, that they're so horrendous, they're so horrific, so barbaric, and they absolutely play to our emotions and our fears, that they're very powerful.
So the objective of terrorism is not just those they kill and maim, it's the effect upon everybody else, the wider society, our way of life, commerce and everything else.
It's not always about big numbers, it's about actually the effect. And we saw that with, Fusilier Lee Rigby, when they, mowed him down in a car using exactly the same technique we've seen today, when they took a knife out and took it to him and killed him. It was one person, and it was terrible, it was tragic. But actually, what did they do? They got everybody in the immediate area. They didn't harm them. They didn't even threaten them. But they told them to film it and put it on social media.
Yeah.
Because they knew that by publicising it, they'd be able to get the message out there and terrorise people.
Yeah, I mean, no one listening to this think, please, in any way, that what Chris Hunter is doing is playing down the sheer awfulness
I
of
promise you
terrorist
I'm not.
attacks. But, you know, the point is, if you're thinking about whether you come to work tomorrow in London, actually, you've got a much greater risk being in a motor car, you know, of something horrible happening to you than you have of a terrorist incident. And it is important, I think, that we get that sense of perspectives. You know, the absolutely last thing that I want to see are the enemies of us and our way of life winning. We need resolve. And we have heard, you know, we heard from Christopher Hope of The Telegraph about the sort of resolve and blitz spirit and sort of phlegmatic approach that people in London are genuinely taking tonight. We even heard from Richard Tice, who was on the bridge when the bodies were lying on the pavement, how remarkably calm, you know, people were. Something that I have to ask you, Chris, is whenever one of these incidents occurs or there's a high security alert of some kind, we hear on the news that the Prime Minister tomorrow morning will chair a meeting of Cobra. And I bet you that right now, 8 out of 10 people listening to this have kind of sort of heard of Cobra, but don't really know what it is, what it does, how it works. Please educate us.
Well, I've got to be honest, you know, on 7/7, I was a fairly sort of mid-ranking officer in the army. I was a major. I was one of the country's specialists in suicide terrorism. So I was seconded to Cobra. And I have to admit that I knew it stood for Cabinet Office Briefing Rooms Alpha, which is a highly secretive briefing room where any significant incident that takes place in the country, whether it's a natural disaster or a terrorism incident, that's where the relevant ministers convene and where the Prime Minister, of course, convenes. It's in a secret location within Whitehall and Westminster. Yeah. I won't divulge where that is. No. But the point is, I had no idea where it was. And I'd been working in Westminster, Whitehall area for 2 years for a year at that point. And, I was sent down there. And effectively, it's a large room. And your listeners and viewers can go online. They can see the size of this particular studio that we're in. It's hardly twice the size of this. That's where the ministers all convene. On the other side of a corridor, and it's in an underground secret location, there are all the intelligence analysts and the representatives from the various different ministries and from the intelligence organisations and the Met Police and so on and so forth, from the military. They have the special advisors in there, the ministers and the Prime Minister and the various Secretaries of State for Defence and so on and so forth will be in the main Cobra room. And when the Prime Minister asks a question or when there's a particular subject comes up, the specialist advisors on the other side of the corridor will be listening in, send through the relevant information to the relevant minister, and they'll be able to make the judgment call and share it.
So for her, as Prime Minister, I guess for the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd as well, this is a way of getting all the expertise together in one room. And do big decisions actually get made there in that room?
They really do. I mean, we called it the Bronze, Silver and Gold Command Network. So effectively, any given incident, the immediate responders, which are usually the emergency services, the immediate sort of, the police that respond, the fire services, the ambulance services, they're the bronze level. At the silver level, it's usually the sort of borough commanders or the regional police station. That's superintendent level, if you like, for the police. And the gold level is usually the constabulary, the head of the constabulary, the chief constable. And then the strategic level is Cobra. And effectively, at every single level, there's a decision being made. It goes up the chain of command. It comes down the chain of command. If it doesn't need to be made at the higher end of the chain of command, it doesn't go that far. So that you've got a very, very effective, rapid decision-making process for any given significant incident.
Thank you. I think and I'm sure almost everyone listening to this has learnt something today. It's been a rotten day, but thank you, Chris Hunter, for coming in, giving us a sense of perspective and what we can expect over the course of the next few weeks. Thank you very much indeed. And talking of the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, this was her response to the incident earlier on today.
I know that the whole country will be thinking and praying for those who are affected, as I am. I want to thank the emergency services for the quick response and pay tribute to their bravery, their courage and their professionalism. I've been briefed by the Met Police and by the security services, and the Security Minister has also been updated. This is an ongoing incident and the government will continue to be updated. The Prime Minister will chair COBRA today. The government's top priority is the security of its people. And I urge everyone to remain calm, but to be vigilant. And if they see anything they are concerned about, they should report it to the police. We have the best police, the best security services in the world, and we must make sure that we let them get on with doing their job. The British people will be united in working together to defeat those who would harm our shared values. Values of democracy, tolerance, and the rule of law. Values symbolised by the Houses of Parliament. Values that will never be destroyed.
Well, my final thought on all of this is when our government, or perhaps even the American government, decides to ban people from taking laptops on aeroplanes or tries to put restrictions and vetting on people coming into their country from other parts of the world, you know, they're not doing it because they're bad people. They're doing it because they genuinely want to try and make us safer. And yet, whenever these things are done, they're met with waves of protest and hoots of derision. We are living in a world that's become increasingly dangerous over the course of the last few years. It is a question of how we deal with it. We heard from Sadiq Khan earlier on this evening, but back in September, you know, he said that unfortunately these things are part and parcel of living in a modern major city. I don't want these things ever to be part and parcel of living in a modern major city, and much as I, over the years, more than anybody, have been critical of big government, concerned about organisations looking at our data or following and tracking what we're doing. I genuinely believe that in the greater good, we have to be 100% behind our police and security services in this country. They need the tools to do this job. They've done a very good job. It's 10 years since this last happened in London. I hope it's longer than that before the next one. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull. This is LBC. Time for the news. It's 8 o'clock.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.